Blood Tribe, Chapter 2, The First Battle. Dan's colleagues shouted his name, scoured every path, and even called for help. But the forest swallowed sound and hope alike. Dan was gone, as though he had vanished into thin air. Far away, in a hidden clearing unknown to outsiders, Dan sat in silence within his bamboo cage. The man who once gave him grim warnings, Kale, had faced his 7th fight that day. Dan watched helplessly as the stranger, battered and bleeding, was struck down in the dirt of the arena. The crowd of tribespeople roared, their chants echoing through the trees. Dan's heart sank. The man's lifeless body was dragged away, leaving Dan alone in his reality. His turn had come. The guards unlocked his cage and pulled him toward the arena. It wasn't a grand coliseum, just a small open ground marked by 4 wooden stakes at the corners. Around it, dozens of tribal men and women gathered, their painted faces glowing in the firelight. Their eyes weren't curious. They were hungry for blood. Dan felt the truth settle in him. There was no escape. From the opposite side, his first opponent stepped into the arena. A boy, no older than 16. His lean frame was lined with muscle, his posture sharp, his eyes ruthless. This wasn't an ordinary teenager. This boy, Riven, had hunted, killed, and survived in ways Dan could barely imagine. The boy lunged first, fists swinging with raw power. His strength was undeniable, but his strikes were straightforward, wild, predictable. Dan ducked, blocked, and absorbed the hits with grit. He waited for openings, then countered. A punch connected, then another. Dan's knuckles burned, but adrenaline kept him moving. He fought with a desperation born not from skill, but from the will to live. Finally, with one well-placed strike, Dan sent the boy crashing to the dirt. The arena fell silent for a moment. The tribes erupted in cheers, tossing a crude shank at Dan's feet. Their painted faces leaned forward, eyes glittering with bloodlust. A simple gesture made their demand clear. Finish him. Dan's chest heaved. He looked at the boy, dazed and barely conscious. No, Dan whispered, pushing the shank away. Instead, he grabbed Riven and shoved him out of the arena, sparing his life. The crowd's cheers turned to snarls. A sharp sting hit Dan's neck. He looked down. A dart. Darkness swallowed him once more. When Dan awoke, he was back in his cage. His head throbbed. His heart pounded. Then he heard footsteps. Riven, the very one Dan had spared, was dragged in front of him. His wide eyes pleaded silently. Dan shook his head, pressing against the cage bars. No, don't. The tribe did not hesitate. A blade flashed, and the boy's life was ended before Dan's eyes. His mercy meant nothing here. Dan fell back into the corner of his cage, devastated, powerless. But one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. He had 1 week before his next fight. 1 week to prepare for a nightmare he couldn't escape. To be continued